Recently, I was interviewed on the Ukrainian channel Politika, where I was asked a question I didn't know how to answer. The question was, why are there so many guns, cannons, ships, and similar weapons off Venezuela's coast? I was just about to answer, we are fighting drugs, but then I thought, that's a bit too much for fighting drugs. And so I promised Politek that I would try to understand this question, and I think I have some understanding now. Here's how I would describe this understanding. A global reset is underway. Or let's call it the Trump World Doctrine. There used to be the Monroe Doctrine. He was the president of the United States of America, who in 1823 sort of proclaimed that America. He meant not just America itself, but the whole continent for Americans. No one declared that the Western Hemisphere is a zone of exclusive interest for the United States, but he demanded that other powers not interfere in our affairs, and in return, according to this doctrine, promised that the United States would not interfere in the affairs of other regions. That is absolutely in accordance with what the first president of the United States, George Washington, bequeathed to the American Congress and the American people, not to interfere in the affairs of other regions. At that time, powerful countries were conquering colonies, but the United States declared no expansion of colonies or conquest of new colonies. This was a response to the attempts of the so-called Holy Alliance, that is Russia, Austria, and Prussia, to conquer territories in the New World, as well as France and Spain trying to expand their possessions. The author of the doctrine was actually the future President John Quincy Adams, who was then the United States Secretary of State. He formulated the policy of non-interference by the United States in the affairs of other countries and regions for many years to come. On the contrary, it called for active intervention in cases when someone from outside the region tried to change the government systems of countries neighboring the United States. In other words, what's yours is also ours. The United States banned further colonization of Latin America and more broadly proclaimed America. So it's not just the United States, but the whole continent for the people of the American continent. We will decide for ourselves how to live here. The thing is, at that time, European countries were very powerful and interfered everywhere. We don't want to get involved in other people's quarrels, and we won't let you bring your wars and conflicts here. So in short, that's what Monroe and Quincy Adams, were trying to establish. Unfortunately, Kay, the following administrations turned the idea of non-interference and the inadmissibility of foreign intervention in the affairs of the continent into the idea of managing the continent's affairs through support, coups, political pressure, and, so to speak, military interventions. Therefore, when we see the American fleet entering the waters of, well, Latin America, the question arises, isn't that too much just to fight drug traffickers? Well, it's clearly too much. But if that's the case, then why are we getting involved there? What are we doing there? Maybe we're developing the Monroe Doctrine, but it turns out we have a new doctrine, and it's called, well, at least that's what I call it, the Trump Doctrine. Let it be called that in the future, but for now, so to speak, there's no official term like that. Essentially, it's a doctrine about redistributing the world. Again, based on the idea that what's ours is ours, and what's yours isn't really yours, and yours is also ours, as they used to say. No, we're dividing things up. Ours is ours, yours is yours. It's a larger-scale redistribution of the world. So to speak, honest or decent or moral, I'm not sure if moral is the right word here, but moral, let's say, principles, and that's exactly what we're talking about today. In the 19th century, the United States of America annexed Texas. The expansion of United States territory in California and other states was a result of the Mexican-American War. That was, well, around 1846 or 1778, something like that. In other words, the annexation of Oregon and California to the Union. I'm not even talking about interference in the affairs of Nicaragua, the Dominican Republic, Cuba, Honduras, where we would just go in, change regimes, and support pro-American governments and groups. So how is the Trump Doctrine different? Well, or how is it similar to the Monroe Doctrine and to what the American government and American foreign policy did between Monroe and Trump? First of all, Trump doesn't say the American continent is our domain. Well, just because he doesn't say it, maybe he doesn't say it, but he does it. Well, let's see. Like Monroe, we do whatever we want and don't let outsiders in. Trump says the United States of America is his top priority. For me, it's the United States of America, not the world or the continent, but the land and people I protect, which is why I was chosen. And by the way, here's Glenn Beck. He's an interesting analyst, but first let's have the news so it's clear what we're actually talking about.
We have breaking news. The Pentagon announced it is sending a Navy carrier strike group to Latin America to support President Trump's fight against drug cartels. This comes after the United States carried out another lawful strike on a boat in international waters last night. That was on September 10th. Defense Minister Pete Hegseth released this video of the attack on the vessel, which he says is operated by Venezuelan cartels involved in drug trafficking. There were 6 people on board. It was said that all of them died as a result of the strike, bringing the death toll in this maritime campaign to about 45 people that we know of. Now, as with previous strikes, the administration has not provided evidence that the targets were actually drug traffickers. Yesterday at the White House, President Trump said he intends to expand this deadly fight against the cartels onto land, and he doesn't think he needs anyone's approval for that, not even Congress.
Now they're arriving by land. And even Earth is worried because I warned them Earth would be next. And we can go to the Senate, we can go to Congress and tell them about it, but I can't imagine they would have any problems with it. But I don't think we'll necessarily be asking for a declaration of war. I think we'll just be killing people who bring drugs into our country. All right, we'll kill them, you understand. They'll be kind of dead.
Senior national security reporter David Rowe from Microsoft and the National Broadcasting Corporation joins me in the studio. Let's discuss the breaking news. What are your thoughts on deploying the Gerald Erford aircraft carrier group?
This is a significant escalation. I mean, an aircraft carrier strike group is one of the largest formations in the United States Navy. It shows how serious the Trump administration is about doing this. But this, I mean, we're talking about a war with organizations involved in drug trafficking, and it's expanding, it's accelerating. And one of the key questions is, how do you win this war? How do you define success if you're trying to stop the flow of drugs? And as we just said, it continues. For decades, the United States has tried to deal with the problem of illegal drugs and drug addiction in this country. So the hope is that these people will be intimidated and will simply stop bringing drugs into the United States. The market is huge and profitable, so it's uncertain if this will succeed.
I mean, everyone understands that this way, you can't stop the flow of drugs into the United States. Then why do it? Again and again, why did we bring such deadly force into the area? Deadly force. It would be enough to smash the armies of all the countries in the Caribbean basin, and there would still be some left. Why? Trump is not some naive fool who thinks that drug dealers will get scared, apologize, and never, ever, ever bring drugs here again. Drug.
All right, but when we talk about the war on drugs, most people just roll their eyes. All right, we've been talking about the war on drugs forever, and it doesn't mean anything. It's just another failed campaign, another round of speeches, another generation caught in the crossfire. But what if I told you that the war on drugs you're actually seeing today has almost nothing to do with cocaine or fentanyl? I think the average person would say, yeah, that sounds about right, and I believe that's true. It's connected to oil and minerals and the revival of American sovereignty.
Glenn, who has serious connections in the Pentagon, the State Department, and the White House, says that we're pretending to fight the drug cartels. But then what are we actually doing?
What you need to understand about Donald Trump is that he changes everything. As the World Economic Forum said, we will call for a great reset, we will change the world. He does it alone. He takes on everything and transforms the world. So that America is stronger and protected, not dragged into endless wars, and strong financially and militarily, so that we can defend ourselves with American sovereignty. So, what's happening now in South America is not a drug operation. Again, that's my opinion. You know, I talked about this yesterday, and I think it's like the Monroe Doctrine. It could be just as important as the Monroe Doctrine.
For the first time since 1823, the United States has developed a harmonious and positive philosophy regarding its place in the world. Because China and Russia are practically at our doorstep, and we need to make a decision.
But then we somehow weakened in this, and now China is everywhere, and Russia used to be everywhere in the southern part of the Western Hemisphere. So he is creating a new Monroe Doctrine. That's Donald Trump. Now look at the map. I'll try. You really need to look at it, because I could say imagine the map, and no one would be able to imagine the map. Venezuela, Guyana, Colombia. All right. 3 names you almost never heard on cable news 5 years ago, and suddenly they became front-page priorities for Washington and our military. What? Well, are they smuggling drugs? Well, yes, maybe, but they're also involved in many other things, including, as we told you, a terrorist island in Venezuela. They have Hamas and Iran in Venezuela. But whoever controls that little triangle controls the Western Hemisphere and its future, its energy, its minerals, and its manufacturing independence, and Venezuela is the key point. All right. It has the largest oil reserves on Earth, and this oil is perfectly suited for the refineries on the Gulf Coast in America. But China and Russia have started to interfere. They sit there like vultures offering Venezuela loans and lucrative deals, and Venezuela is becoming more and more communist and increasingly hostile toward America. And they're trying to mortgage the whole system to Chinese state-owned oil giants. So what are we doing? Well, we haven't done anything about it. We just let them in. And now suddenly we're conducting naval exercises in the Caribbean and imposing sanctions. We're moving more ships and more naval forces. I mean, this is a full-scale offensive. We're sending a signal, but I'm not sure it's only to the drug lords. All right, this is a pressure campaign that resembles the old war on drugs. But actually, I believe it's aimed at pushing out Chinese influence.
It's starting to become a bit clearer. China wants to get its hands, a paw, on all the rare earth metals in the world, and we don't want the sources of these essential elements to be exclusively in the hands of China, which is definitely not our friend. Maybe not an enemy yet, but certainly not a friend. And we scare Latin American countries so they don't make deals with China, with Russia, with Iran, with North Korea. I don't know who else. Because that could provoke your removal. Presidents, dictators, prime ministers, kings, barons by our fleet, which is, well, just a stone's throw away from you. I'm not discussing morality now, ladies and gentlemen. We'll address it later at the end. We can't let the production of our weapons fall into enemy hands. Subtitles created by Dima Torzak. As soon as we're in conflict with them, they can cut us off, so to speak, cut off our lifeline, yes. In addition, American companies are building oil extraction facilities in the coastal waters of Latin American countries. Those very platforms, yes, and we really don't want them to explode.
Leads the charge is leading the offensive there, and Washington is not just helping to fight the traffickers, it's protecting American offshore platforms. They're building radar networks, they're blocking all the coastlines, because it's not just about barrels, it's about cables, information, pipelines, and rare earth minerals. All these things will fuel the next century. And then Colombia, we know, because that was the first thing that suddenly Donald Trump started talking about, about Colombia. And then the Panama Canal and all that. What are we talking about? Are we back in 1958? No, nobody talked about it. Nobody paid attention to it. This guy is so ahead of his time. He's so far beyond the horizon that I think people don't really understand what he's doing.
Let me remind you that we just kicked China out of Canada and took control of 2 seaports on both sides of the canal. So now, unlike a year ago, we completely control this incredibly important passage from one ocean to another, which is crucial for our military goals, not just for trade and other purposes. It seems Glenn is right, and Trump does have a global vision and, well, his own doctrine.
Colombia is the link between the Caribbean Sea and the Pacific Ocean. For decades, we've been told that the presence of American troops there is connected to the fight against the cartels. Maybe, but I think the truth is that Colombia is a geographic and logistical bridge between the hemispheres. All right, it guards both oceans, it protects the Panama Canal, it consumes, and it's located on minerals that every modern economy needs. Now, rare earth elements, all those things. You control Colombia, and you control the arteries of the Western Hemisphere. This isn't a fight against drugs. This is a grand strategy. At this time, I want to explain the world to you through two things, and all of this is based on a theory that I am promoting, a theory. And I could be wrong about this, because when I look at all the points, they don't make sense. You know, this is about that submarine with cocaine, right? We send our entire army to catch the submarine. I understand that I want the drugs to stop, but really?
The Pentagon reported that the drug lords have a submarine for smuggling drugs, and they sent people to fight this submarine. A free flotilla to duel with all the Russian and European fleets, that is, to catch the submarine.
I think there's a bigger strategy here that everyone is missing. All right, so why is all this important? Trump is the first president since Reagan who I think understands that America's strength doesn't come from endless overseas wars. It comes from controlling supply chains, from creating sovereign trade, energy, technological pipelines, all the things that go through our hemisphere, not Beijing. So he's no longer trying to make America the world's policeman. He's not doing that. He's making us a secure citadel. He's making every region, Europe, think about what he did with NATO, what he's doing. We will no longer be your policeman. You have to take responsibility. You have to do it. The Middle East, we will no longer be the policeman here. All of you Arabs, do it. Come together. Make peace. He mediates for peace, discusses freedom, and urges you to take responsibility. He's doing this in Latin America so they can control themselves. Every action you see, sanctions, arrests, freezing aid, even tightening visa regulations, all of this, I believe, is aimed at blocking critical resources before China does. This is economic warfare disguised as moral control.
Yes, this is starting to make sense, and it matches Trump's actions in the past. Do you always, when thinking about the future, look at what a person did in similar situations before? NATO, we will no longer protect you if you don't become strong yourselves, and then we will interact with you as equals, as partners, or go under the protection of anyone who is ready to cover you, whether it's Russia, China, or even the Ayatollah. We don't care. Sunnis, you trade oil, and you know that if anything happens, we will protect everything. Your oil, your fields, and your ships. No, that won't happen anymore. Look at Israel. They have the technology, you have the money. Join forces, make deals, protect yourselves. And we, just like with Europe, if you become strong, then we are partners with you. If not, go under the control of Iran's Shiites. It's your choice. And Thailand and Cambodia, in general, Asia, do you want to be our partners? Well, we're ready to buy from you, but just stop killing each other. Then we'll have a normal relationship. By the way, it's the same with Congo and Rwanda. By the way, it's the same with Azerbaijan and Armenia. Stop killing each other, let's trade and we'll help. Thank you, and we'll become your partners. You don't want to. Well, okay. Then keep bending over in your stinky holes and wait for the uncles who want to rob you to conquer you. But you have an amazing opportunity to enter into a partnership with us. But not as policemen, we will come to you. Thank you. And a partner is a completely different function.
This is not about ideology. This is not about drugs. This concerns the global architecture. Trump is destroying the old corrupt order, the corrupt global order of the World Economic Forum's Great Reset, and he is building a new one, not based on dependency, debt, and endless interference. He is paving the way, he is cutting down trees, he is making the road and laying the asphalt for the new one. A hemisphere that produces its own energy, protects its borders, works together, and restores the American right to determine its own destiny, encouraging all other countries to do the same. To me,
Actually, I like this doctrine. It means the president of our country cares about our country. Your leadership should protect your interests. The problem arises when you do something together with our enemies that could harm us. Then a situation occurs, like with Kennedy and Khrushchev. So, well, you remember, right? Cuba, Khrushchev brought missiles to Cuba right next to us. Kennedy stopped the Soviet ships, and what to do? He had no right to do that and brought the world to the brink of nuclear war. We were lucky, thank God, that the Soviets didn't go into conflict. When the southern states decided to secede from the northern states, from the United States of America, Catalin Colne sacrificed 400,000 people but didn't let them secede. Brezhnev sent the armies of 4 countries into Czechoslovakia to keep it from slipping out of the Soviets' grasp. Putin destroyed half of Ukraine, has already killed about 1.5 million people, mostly Slavs whom he swore to protect, just to keep Ukraine from running to the West. History shows time and again how those who can easily invade, how history watches, kills, and takes over those who are nearby but refuse to dance to their tune, to the tune of a stronger neighbor. The Persians conquered the world. Greeks, Germans, British, French, even the Portuguese and the biblical Jews burned with fire and sword, taking what they wanted to take. God told the Jews, but for the Germans, no one knows who told them. The Spaniards took things out of Mexico, Peru, Bolivia, and Colombia. It seems that in the 16th century, they took 200 tons of gold, or maybe 200 tons of gold. And during the same period, 16,000 tons of silver. That is, throughout the 14th to 18th centuries. Some sources say 500 tons, others say 400. Either way, it's 400. 500 tons of gold. So it's free money. What did they do to Spain? They destroyed Spain, the economy of Spain. So, well, you can buy everything, right? Yes, the Spanish stopped creating new things and even abandoned their old industries. At that time, England was hungry and poor. They built up their navy, improved their ships and cannons, and completely defeated the old-fashioned, lazy, bloated Spanish Armada. The Armada came to an end. So how does the Trump doctrine, the doctrine, differ from these historical examples? It seems to be the same thing. We don't want a strong rival next to us. We're ready to attack our neighbors and make them our vassals. We need their oil, minerals, metals. We need, let's say, a perimeter to protect us from a possible enemy attack. We want Greenland and Canada to join us. Alaska is already ours, to unite for defense as a barrier against attacks from the pole. On the other hand, we want to do the same thing in the Caribbean basin, including Colombia, Venezuela, and Panama. Is there any difference with Putin, with Napoleon, with Genghis Khan, or even with Alexander the Great?
I invite you to look at the bigger picture. We know that the rest of the world has long been moving toward a new world government and a new world order. We also know that Donald Trump has never supported this. We know that Donald Trump does not like wars. So why do we have the military in Venezuela, of all places? Because it's not about chasing smugglers under the jungle. It's about pushing China and Russia out of our own backyard. It's a quiet, strategic, and, if I'm right, brilliant reset. Because if Trump succeeds, historians will look back at this time and call it what it really is, the second Monroe Doctrine. The moment when America stopped apologizing for defending its hemisphere and started restoring its sovereignty. Trump supports a strong America First approach, but that doesn't mean ignoring other countries. It simply means that we have to do what is necessary to make sure we are strong enough and to strengthen the countries around us, as well as the countries we have protected all these years. Give them an incentive as well. Also, the opportunity to unite in their regions and to restore and protect their sovereignty. One barrel at a time, one chip at a time, one border at a time.
Well, let's still try to sum up, shall we? So, President Lincoln sacrificed 400,000 Americans to keep the United States of America from falling apart. Brezhnev sacrificed fewer, but his tanks crushed demonstrations in Prague. I was there 6 months later, and I was told stories about women and children crushed by tanks. Yes, I was there at the end of '68. So Putin killed 1.5 million people so that Russia could have a security belt of subjugated countries, which Brezhnev protected from any invasions. Now, Alexander Makedonsky went to war against Daria. Well, those are, the Farsi people, the Persians, yes. Because he was afraid that Greece's independence was coming to an end, Rome destroyed Carthage. Why did he suddenly attack? Because he was afraid of losing Sicily. That's all. Continuation. World War I. Continuation. It started because England and France did not allow Germany, which had no access to the sea, to develop colonies in new worlds and continents. World War I started because the victors and real culprits of World War I, England and France, forced Germany to sign the most humiliating and oppressive agreements, and Germany could not develop. That's right, develop like neighboring countries did, and it started to fall behind them. Wars break out when contradictions between states become acute and, from their point of view, irresolvable. Maybe they just couldn't find a solution. For example, President Trump creates solutions brilliantly, but back then there wasn't someone as talented, so they didn't find one. That's why wars broke out. What Trump is doing, if we understand him correctly, is that he wants to get rid of what could lead to these sharp and unsolvable problems before they even arise. He wants, as they say, to preempt, if that's the right word, conflicts and major bloodshed. So imagine that, for example, in Colombia there is a Russian airfield, a missile base, something like that. And in Venezuela, there are Chinese missiles, drones, submarines. I'm not sure I like going into other countries and imposing our governance on them. Let them have enough internal freedom, but still it's not complete freedom. And honestly, I don't like blowing up boats that are supposedly carrying drugs. I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I trust our military, but I'm not 100% sure. I like even less the rhetoric about a possible ground operation in Venezuela and Colombia. Yeah. Honestly, I hate saying the word that's just 2 letters, but it just cancels out everything that was said before. I love you, but I see someone else. Or you're a good guy, but if you get in my way, I'll hit you with a rock. Nevertheless, it means but. Maybe, like with gangrene, it means I feel sorry for you, but I have to cut off your foot, because otherwise the gangrene will spread higher and higher, and then I'll have to cut off your whole leg, or just throw you out on the dump altogether. The fact that Trump is reshaping the world is kind of obvious. He's stopping wars, he's putting economic pressure on his opponents. He brilliantly got Qatar involved. Got Qatar to invest money in artificial intelligence in the United States of America on the condition, we'll give you the opportunity to invest and make a fortune. But there's a condition. Stop funding Hamas and American universities so that they, so to speak, act against Israel. Stop it. At the same time, when Iran didn't go for the deal, Trump went ahead and bombed underground factories and laboratories. If your opponent thinks you'll never strike, he doesn't respect you. But if he knows that a hammer over his head could seriously hit him on the skull, he'll think twice, 3 times, even 7 times, and then cut only after that. There. A Saakashvili, by the way, built his revolution and the transformation of Georgia like this, so to speak, like this, with this very hammer. And time, he wasn't the one who dropped it. But it was precisely because of this, because of his sometimes forceful methods, that he was overthrown and imprisoned. I believe that Trump wants to build a world I want to live in. Thank you. I really agree with him, at least because I understand the vision of the kind of relationships I would like to live in. So, what he's fighting against, I don't like either. In fact, it really disgusts me. As for the methods, so far I've liked all of them too. I mean, I often didn't understand something, or why he was doing something, right? But when the result happened, I was always satisfied with it, and I started to understand why he was doing it. I hope that this cleansing of our hemisphere, let's call it that, from Greenland to Venezuela, will happen without wars, blood, or violence. Is that enough? I can't say that I don't want to live. But let's wait and hope that our opponents will want to become our friends, or at least our partners. And the worst won't happen. Until next time.